Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Introduction to Business 30. This is the Achieving World-Class Operations module, and this will be our final lesson together, Lesson 7, which I've titled Lean Process Improvement. I'm really looking forward to this particular lesson because this is a topic of personal research and business practice, as well as teaching interest for me. So hopefully you enjoy your time during this lesson that we're doing right now on Lean Process Improvement. As an overview of this lesson, here's what I want us to discuss. We're going to begin by looking at a definition of lean and describing briefly some of the sources of waste that exist in real processes. So if you look at a definition of lean, you can Google it or look in Wikipedia and maybe get some longer definitions or more textbook type definitions. And even in your textbook for this course, there's a description of lean and lean process improvement. But I like looking at this specific definition that I have in the PowerPoint slides in front of you. It's to provide value with less waste. I like being concise when it comes to defining things, and to me this definition really speaks to what lean is. That your goal is to provide a sense of value to your in the products that you produce or the services you deliver. And you want to do that with less waste. You notice in this case that this really ties in nicely to the overall definition of operations management. We began in the first lesson together by looking at how operations management was the transformation of inputs into outputs to produce products or deliver services that are of value to our customers or clients. In this case, what we're doing from a lean perspective is trying to address the creation of value while doing that with less waste. If you look at the history of lean, it's becoming very popular and common right now in healthcare, especially here in Saskatchewan. We see it being used in manufacturing. The Toyota production system is probably one of the more famous examples of it being used in vehicle systems. Henry Ford used principles of lean back in the early part of the 20th century. But the earliest example I've been able to find from the history of lean is from about 500 years ago. The Republic of Venice in Italy was producing these huge ships for the Venetian arsenal. So these really large ships that were sailing around the world and would be involved in shipping things from point A to point B, and obviously involved in some of their wartime activities as well. But 500 years ago, the Republic of Venice developed a system, almost like an assembly line system, using standardized parts, and they were able to produce nearly a ship a day, which was a great task at that time. It enabled the Venetian arsenal to be a worldwide power. This is one of the early examples I've seen of an organization that's been able to apply lean in practice. Earlier I said what lean is, that you're providing value with less waste. Here's what it's not. Lean is not layoffs. Lean is not going there and making people work faster. What you're doing from lean is looking at a process and identifying what doesn't need to be there. What's blockading our people from producing the things that they should be doing, doing their best work possible. What are some of the things currently in the system that don't need to be there? It's not about reducing headcount or firing people. It's not about layoffs. It's about providing value in the products and services you produce with less waste. Now, I mentioned a lot about waste already in this lesson. If you look at the world of lean, there's really 8 sources of waste. And what I'm going to do is go through these just in some brief details here. The 8 sources of waste are correction, overproduction, motion, material movement, waiting, inventory, overprocessing, and underutilized human talent. Let me go through these quickly to show you examples of these 8 sources of waste. This is the core of lean process improvement. It's the ability to look at a process and identify which of these sources of waste are involved in a process and how prevalent they are. The first one is correction. Correction basically means having to do something over again because of a defect, because of an error, because of maybe low quality in the product or service. It's having to do what's called rework because you didn't get it right the first time. In the example on the little picture on the right hand side, that's actually a screenshot from my experiences a couple of years ago. Our family was trying to book a hotel visit using some of the points that we'd accumulated for the hotel chain that we tended to use quite a bit. And we had to do this over and over and over again because of some defects and some errors that were happening in the computer system. It wasn't allowing us to do the transaction, and it caused us a lot of frustration. So here's an example where there is a source of waste involved. In this particular situation, there were a lot of defects appearing because of errors in the system. It made it very frustrating for the customer. Now, you might think we talk a lot in Lean about having 0 defects. Well, what if you had 99.9% quality? In other words, what if only 0.1% of the time you produced a defect? Well, even 0.1% of the time producing a defect is still a problem. If you produced at 99.9% good stuff and 0.1% bad stuff, here's an example of what you would face. The U.S. Postal Service would lose 16,000 pieces of mail every hour. There would be 2,000 unsafe airplane landings every day. There'd be 22,000 checks deducted from the wrong bank account every day. Every week there'd be 500 incorrect surgeries completed. That's why organizations that adopt Lean look at reducing the defect rate to as low as possible to make sure that you're providing high quality products and services. The second source of waste is overproduction. And this is producing more than you need, faster than you need, or sooner than what's needed by the next process. This one is challenging because often it's really difficult to see this waste because everybody looks like they're busy. You're producing as fast as you can, you're producing as much as you can, but if you produce it faster or more than what's required by the next process, you're going to build up a lot of inventory in the system, and that'll be a source of waste. That picture on the right hand side is not my desk, but it sure looks like it some days. The third source of waste is motion. And this is an example, a picture from a healthcare organization in the United Kingdom. And what this is showing is what's called a spaghetti diagram. A spaghetti diagram is basically showing where the movement is happening back and forth in this particular healthcare situation. So you've got healthcare workers that are going back and forth repeatedly. It's creating a lot of excess foot traffic, excess motion that doesn't need to be there. That's a source of waste. You can also have what's called material movement or transportation as a source of waste. And this is if you are moving stuff, products, work in process, finished goods, customers that might be moving within a specific process. Could be a source of waste because they're moving back and forth repeatedly. There's too much movement in the system. Waiting. Waiting is the fifth source of waste that we have, and this is a topic that we looked at in some detail in an earlier lesson. So this should come as no surprise that it would be a source of waste. It can be frustrating. It can be really problematic if your customers or your products are waiting far too long. By the way, this is an example in Saskatoon. I don't know how many of you have seen this particular intersection, but it's an intersection known as Preston and Main, not far from where I live. I took a picture one day because there were a lot of vehicles waiting at this four-way stop. I don't know if you can see the image clearly on your screen, but here's an example of waiting at the university. Now, the students here, they aren't waiting to buy textbooks. They're not waiting to get into one of my classes. They're not waiting to see me. You know what they're waiting at? Yeah, they're waiting at a Tim Hortons. So it's showing the long waiting lines that can develop when people are waiting for something. Excess inventory is the sixth source of waste. That's where you have too much inventory, too many things that are piling up. It's a source of waste in this situation. The seventh source of waste is overprocessing. And that's where maybe you have some processing that's redundant, in other words, not needed, or it's purely unnecessary. A good example here is when you might have to provide the same information repeatedly over and over multiple times. For example, suppose you were calling a company to maybe describe a poor situation, a poor experience you had with their product or service. You purchased something online, got delivered to you, and it fell apart quickly. It didn't work the way you wanted to. If you had to call that company and to go through several different organizations or people to describe your problem, that would be over-processing. You're having to tell the same story to different people multiple times. That's over-processing. The eighth source of waste is what's called underutilized human talent. And this is where you've got your staff in your organization, but you're not appropriately using their abilities. For example, I am a professor here at the Edwards School of Business. I don't think my boss, which is the dean, would want me photocopying my own exams, because there are people that are paid to teach the material, and then we have staff that do the copy center and do the exam preparation and make sure that it's all set up for us. In a healthcare situation, if you have somebody maybe working as a nurse, you wouldn't want them taking appointments for people. You would want a health clerk or a receptionist doing that. You want to make sure that when you're delivering your process appropriately, that you're utilizing your human talent in the best possible way. So that's a description of the 8 sources of waste. Let me conclude with what's known a very popular tool that we use in lean systems. And this is called a poka-yoke, which is a word that we've taken from the Japanese language, but it basically means a fail-safe device. It's something that's set up to reduce or eliminate the chance of a mistake occurring or an error happening. Here's an example in a vehicle. Now you might see these on your vehicles or your family's vehicles. It's a gas cap tether, which is directly connecting the gas cap to the vehicle. So it reduces the chance that you drive away after filling your tank and you leave the gas cap on top of the vehicle and it rolls away. Also, you might see on your vehicles, you should check this out the next time you get into your vehicle, see if there's an arrow on the display panel in front of you, right by the fuel tank, that might be a little arrow pointing to the left or the right. Basically, it's showing you the location of the fuel tank. I think that's a great thing for rental vehicles, because you get into a rental vehicle and you might have no idea where the fuel tank is, but that arrow is telling you that the fuel tank is either on the driver's side or the passenger side. If you've ever visited Europe, you might have seen something like this. It's basically signs painted right into the road to help people who are unaccustomed to British or European traffic flow to know which way they should look. We know that over in Europe, vehicles will drive on the left-hand side of the road. So what this is doing is it's telling people to look the appropriate way so they don't walk out into traffic and get damaged or hurt in some way by a vehicle. Here's another good example of a poka-yoke. This you might see at a fast food restaurant. Notice that the patron here they're returning their sandwich tray after their meal, but the hole in the garbage can is big enough to take all the garbage, but the tray is bigger than the actual can opening itself. So you can throw away your trash, but you don't throw away the tray. It's an example of a poka-yoke. It reduces or eliminates the chance that somebody will throw away that plastic tray. So folks, that's a discussion of lean process improvement. We went through a definition, we discussed the sources of waste, and then we had a discussion about a lean tool known as a poka-yoke. I want to thank you for the time that you've spent throughout the Introduction to Business 30 course, and especially in this module, looking at achieving world-class operations. Thank you for your time and attention so far. Best wishes for success in the remainder of this course and throughout your future studies and your career. Hopefully we'll talk to you later, and hopefully we'll see some of you at the University of Saskatchewan. Have a great day. Bye now.